That doesn't make me feel good. It doesn't make me feel good. I'm going to call it closing night of the show, and that's why everyone's coming out. That's how I'm going to word it. Good evening, everyone. How are you this evening? My name is Josh Kaplan. I'm a science teacher at Valley View Middle School. I see some familiar faces in here.
Allie Screen, science teacher also at Valley View.
James Dalal, I'm the vice principal over at Valley View.
So Valley View's got a strong representation this evening, folks. We're going to make sure we give you a good overview, not just from the middle school perspective. Our goal this evening is to try to illuminate how the Common Core relates to all the other content areas within the school. As you probably know, Common Core sets standards for English language arts and for mathematics, but that doesn't mean it's just limited to English language arts and mathematics. Those standards really help all of the content areas to bring our level up, to teach on a much higher level and really connect everything together in a way I think you're really going to like. So let's take a look and jump in a little bit here. First thing we're going to talk about is what exactly are academic standards and what do they mean?
So science has our own set of academic standards, which are the next generation science standards, and they were adopted this year. So the nice thing about them is they have a whole section at the bottom of them that says how they align to Common Core, and it's a section on Common Core alignment to math, Common Core alignment to ELA. So what that means is that you'll have the same language and the same skills that the kids can use interchangeably in any subject. So it kind of makes it easier on them and then creates open doors that we can be cross-curricular a lot easier in school too.
And they are working on standards in history. Running into some problems in the area of history, that it is a little bit of a subject-oriented study. So they're having a little bit of difficulties really making the skills open enough where it can apply to any subject, but it is supposed to be out within the next 2 years.
So things that you'll see that may seem a little different in the classroom is that there's more links between subjects or topics that they're going to be learning, and then they can kind of use a little bit more interchangeable between subjects too. You may see a lot more complex text or also different types of text. So maybe before it was just a textbook, you'll see a variety of different sources now. You'll see videos that they'll podcasts, all different types of things that they can then utilize for normally like an argument or some kind of task. So you had this example for social studies.
Yeah, in the social studies, a great example is you can take information where it's divided up into what are called document-based questions, DBQs, and a document can be anything. It can be a quote from a particular person who was there. It can be an article that was written afterward, where it's a secondary source. It can be a picture. It can be a painting. And a great example is all those different sources would be hanging around the room. The students would have a matrix where the sources were from, what time period that particular source was created, some of the background knowledge necessary, and then they would go from source to source, filling out the matrix, and kind of piece together organizing that information to make a conclusion about what the event was and why it happened, or why the different reasons it may have happened, and start to formulate an argument based on those sources that they've received. So it's really that application piece with the reading, the analysis, and then the writing. And whenever we can get all of these thought processes working together, it leads to long-term retention, which is the goal. Because we don't want regurgitation, which we all faced. Let's face it, we studied for that chem test and we threw it up on the way out. I did, I don't know about you guys. Maybe not some of the chemistry people in the class. Yeah.
Oh, you're going to throw it to me with that one.
That's right.
Terrific.
Science teacher, go ahead.
Well, let's hope.
Just to add on, the only thing that I know it might be a shift in some places, but one thing I don't think it's a shift in Valley View, or in Denville in general. It's just science and social studies are places where it's already been hands-on, so it's not really that much of a shift. The kids are just gonna be maybe using more text to support what they're doing. So it's not too much of a change from what they've already been experiencing in school.
And there's gonna be an organized skill set to use to apply. And you know, they give examples of creating matrices. They give examples of creating Venn diagrams, of taking that knowledge and organizing it and being able to present it, and what the processes are and what the language is going to be across the different classes.
So one of the main things you're hearing over and over again is the use of texts and the use of sources. And that's not new information for those of us in the science and social studies fields. We're used to using a lot of evidence to construct arguments. That's where we're seeing the shift, or actually where we've already seen the shift in Common Core. That's what Common Core really focuses on. How do we use ideas to construct arguments? Again, it's not about regurgitation. It's much more about how do I use this knowledge? What do I do with this information? And how do I construct a bigger idea from finding smaller ideas? Does that make a little bit more sense? Okay. So let's talk a little bit about what that really looks like in a classroom environment, how that changes for us. The good news is that Denville is a really forward-thinking district. We've started initiatives over 10 years ago towards this goal, where we've started building towards the idea of constructing knowledge, of investigating and building new concepts. We've been doing that for many, many years, so we're great at this already. Now we're kind of connecting all of the content areas together in a new way through the use of the Common Core. So in the classroom, there's a couple more things that you're going to be seeing that you may not have seen before, even in the English Language Arts room, even in the math room. Things like words like investigation. Investigation is not something we've seen so much so far, but we're going to see much more of it now. Things like analyzing text. I think you can hear these complicated words. Things that force people to do some thinking, to put them in the idea that they've got to build concepts to get a larger idea. Move on a little bit here. This diagram is terrific. This diagram, I know it looks big and complicated, but we're going to break it down for you, I promise. This diagram is actually produced by the NSTA, which is the National Science Teacher Association, and it's all about the next generation science standards, which is what NGSS stands for. Mr. Delahaye, how you like those acronyms?
Education loves acronyms.
We love acronyms in education. One of the great things about this is you can kind of see how everything relates together. Here's some math standards, and here's some of the ELA standards and the science standards, and they really connect quite well right in the middle with these higher order thinking steps that we're trying to do. So I'd like to give you an example to help you kind of nail it down a little bit. I want to give you an example of how we used to do something before Common Core and how we're doing stuff now because of Common Core. So one of the main topics that I teach in 7th grade is physics. And I'm going to say it's physics light because it's the beginnings of physics. It's forces, motion, and energy. Okay? So that's what physics is all about. One small topic in physics, and I'm going to explain it to you, is potential energy. Now I'm going to tell you what potential energy is. And you're going to remember it for at least 5 minutes. Potential energy is stored up energy, energy waiting to be released. And I bet as you walk out of the room today, you'll remember what potential energy is, and then you'll go to your car, and then you'll probably be thinking about the drive home, and potential energy is kind of like that. So what we used to do is, here's potential energy, here's what it is, I'll give you an example, and we're done with that topic. Here's how we're doing it in light of Common Core. So, you all drive, I'm assuming, or at least most of you drive anyway. There's speed limits on the road, correct? Well, did you ever wonder why there's speed limits on the road? And what are the consequences of going over that speed limit? What if I were to ask you to write a letter to a new driver, somebody who's driving for the first time, and explain to them why they shouldn't go over the speed limit? Those limits are not arbitrary. They're to prevent crashes from becoming too severe. If you have a crash at a higher speed, it's going to cause more damage. But to understand that topic, you've got to know what potential energy is, because you can calculate the energy of that moving vehicle based on the mass and the speed of that vehicle. Does that make sense? If I'm going to write a letter to somebody and try to convince them of something, what I have to do is understand the underlying concepts. You see how we're getting at potential energy now? We're making it part of a bigger idea that you have to construct. The students write letters. And by the way, we are doing that in the 7th grade. We're having them write letters. Do you see the language arts tie-in? Writing a letter, a convincing letter. Do you see the math tie-in as well? Common Core lets us make these big links between the topics in a way that we couldn't really do before. It's a really nice thing to be able to teach in a unified way. We're all really liking the way it brings us all together. That's the big idea we're trying to get to tonight. Common Core unites us, gives us some common language to teach together.
And common skills, so that when they're going from one teacher to the next, no matter what the subject is, it's just the same thing that they're utilizing and being able to draw from. So I think, actually, no, we're good. We're coming to the question part. Does anyone have any questions for the science and social studies people? No?
If you can't think of
All
them
the
now,
math and language arts answered everything?
answered everything. If you can't think of them now, we're going to be in the conversation cafe, so we'll be able to answer more questions for you individually. Okay?
Thank you for coming.
Thanks so much for coming out tonight.